surprised when we have a grown man in his 30s that can't do emotions and is like hurting his marriage. Everybody's like, wow, what's going on? And it's like, well, how was this kid raised? And so I call it the difference between like a client and a student. Client mindset is fix me, coach, fix me, therapist. Student mindset is coach, therapist, chiropractor, tell me what I need to do differently and I'll do it differently. Actually show you how to do something like a skill, and we're gonna learn it like a martial art over time, and you're gonna get better at this. And it just gave me the freedom to be myself, which is really what good therapy and coaching is about, is helping people be who they really are. And if therapists are hiding behind a mask, not being themselves, like how's that work? A good couple or a good relationship, whether it's a business partnership, a parent-child relationship, is about the language of emotions and how to communicate them and how to receive them.
Okay, I will. It's very conversational style. Feel free to throw things back at me and ask me questions as well. But otherwise, I'll just roll into the intro and we'll get into it.
Remind me your family situation, married, kids, etc. Just remind me about that.
Yeah, married, 3 boys, 8, 4, and 0. Had a daughter that passed away as a stillborn in 2019. And my wife and I did deal with infidelity. We separated 5 times over 3 years, and we're still together. We made it through. So.
Incredible. Cool.
So, yeah. That's why, and part of the reason probably why this topic is so important to me as well. Okay, I'll roll into it. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Furious the Curious Show. My guest today is Jayson Gaddis. He is the author. He's an author, relationship expert, and the founder of the Relationship School. After years of working as a counselor and realizing that most of us are emotionally illiterate when it comes to love, Jayson made it his mission to teach people the one class we didn't get in school, how to actually do relationships. He's the host of the Jayson Gaddis podcast and the author of the best-selling book, Getting to Zero, which is a practical guide to the high-stakes conflict resolution. What I appreciate most about Jayson's work is that he doesn't treat marriage like it's a fairy tale. He treats it like a dojo. He believes conflict isn't a sign of failure, but a biological opportunity to sharpen our character and deepen our commitment. Jayson, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me.
Great to be here.
You've said most people are emotionally illiterate. What did you see in your therapy work that led you to that conclusion?
Yeah, so much of the work of a good couple or a good relationship, whether it's a business partnership, a parent-child relationship, is about the language of emotions and how to communicate them and how to receive them. And it seems like a lot of us are taught to kind of stuff our feelings or use our feelings to lash out, but we're not really taught to articulate what's going on inside and then receive someone else's emotional life in a good way that has both people feeling cared about.
And so you were doing your counseling work, and I'm assuming this is what a lot of the counseling stuff is based on, is that people aren't communicating and it's gotten out of hand. What made you feel like you couldn't deal with the issues in counseling? What made you say, hey, like people are coming here, they need to be taught before it gets this bad? Is that kind of what your thinking was?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different kinds of people, right? The people that want quick fixes and band-aids, and then the people that want to learn. And so I call it the difference between like a client and a student. Client mindset is fix me, chiropractor, fix me, coach, fix me, therapist. Student mindset is coach, therapist, chiropractor, tell me what I need to do differently and I'll do it differently. And so, people just want to run their stories about other people and blame and defend, and then they want to feel better without actually getting better and growing. And so I got tired of, seeing 20 clients a week, week after week, the same stories, the same, no, I didn't do my homework. No, nothing's changed. I was like, man, either they're wrong or I'm doing something wrong. And so I decided to start experimenting with longer term commitments with people. Like, I'm going to actually show you how to do something like a skill, and we're going to learn it like a martial art over time, and you're going to get better at this. And that's when I started a school and made people commit to 9 months of training. And then the results were dramatically different than therapy results.
Okay. So is it specifically, you think the biggest part of therapy was that it wasn't very committal, like that it's just, you can just do one like session at a time and that's it, and people aren't committed long term? If there was like a 9-month commitment to counseling, for example, do you think the results would be different?
Not
Is it?
necessarily, because people go to therapy for years, decades even, and don't change. Um, so sometimes it's the modality, sometimes it's the person's just stuck in their victim consciousness, and they really don't want to get better. They want to blame, and they want to run their stories. And so there's a lot of variables, but I do notice that when you push people to make a commitment and you challenge them to actually develop, and you frame it like development, like you can't get stronger in the gym unless you actually keep pushing your weight limit. You're just going to stay stuck at the same level, and it's uncomfortable. There's always discomfort, and a lot of people, a lot of us, it's just hedonistic adaptation in humans. We don't like discomfort, and you know.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
people are like, okay, I can embrace discomfort and I can make a commitment of time, and let's find out if I get better.
Hmm, hmm. Okay. And did counseling also restrict you, because there are certain rules in counseling that you couldn't tell the client what you actually thought about certain things, and that they were being like a bitch, or like
Sometimes,
like?
yeah, sometimes. I
Okay.
mean, I stopped being a therapist when I started drinking ayahuasca and just like bending the rules. And I was talking publicly online about my own issues, and I would use case studies from my clients. I was writing a blog and posting on Facebook. This is in, 2008, 2009. And I started just talking more openly. And I felt like people were like, hey, man, you're a therapist. You shouldn't talk like this. And you shouldn't suggest people go do psychedelics. And you shouldn't, there's a lot of taboo, like no-nos, that I could lose my license. So I just
Mhm.
said, cool, I don't want a license anymore. I don't want to call myself a therapist anymore. I'll call myself a coach. And then that just gave me the freedom to be myself, which is really what good
Mm.
therapy and coaching is about, is helping people be who they really are. Um, and if therapists are hiding behind a mask, not being themselves, like how's that work?
Yeah. So do you have I mean, I very much agree with that. So I was in counseling since I was 9 years old, and did so much of it, and still actually do some therapy now. But I got the most out of when I got coached, and when I had a therapist that broke the rules and told me what he
Yeah,
actually thought.
yeah.
And that made a massive difference. So you think fundamentally the method that and the rules around counseling right now are actually hindering a lot
I
of
think they
growth?
can be. Again, it's so much of it depends on the practitioner. I train coaches, and one of the things I tell them is you, you don't always want to tell people what you think. Like if a person's like comes in and is like, should I break up with my partner and what should I do, coach? You don't necessarily tell them what to do, right? Because if it doesn't go well, they're going to come back and blame you. Well, you told me to do this.
That's right.
So we have to be
Yeah.
careful about being authentic and saying what we really think and what we really see. Um, so it's a dance, and we want to empower people to find the answers on their own, but we also want to be, um, we have opinions, we have biases, and I think it's okay. And agendas, like I, as a coach, I have an agenda for people to get from point A to B, and I'm like, I know how to get people moving, and not everybody wants to do that. And so I tell them sometimes what I think. I think you're not doing the work. I'll say something like that, right? I don't
Mhm.
think you really want this, but I don't tell them what they should do with their life.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. 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 I don't think a good coach should do that. Hey guys, just 60 seconds here for a quick shout out. I want to talk to you about my buddy Rhett Dolhan. I work with him at MDT Sporting Goods, and is the main video editor there and videographer for MDT, and has made amazing videos over the years. I really enjoyed working with him. And I also work with him on The Briefcase in the Barn. He was the editor for the first 20, 30 episodes, and it's just a super talented guy. And he also does wedding videos now. And so for a very good price, you can book him for this summer. And so if you know someone that is getting married, would you please pause the podcast a second and just text them Rhett's website, and let them know that that's an option for them. He's booking to the summer. Things book up quick. So that's RHETTDOLHAN.com, RhettDolhan.com. So RHETTDOLHAN.com. LAN.com. Great guy, booking right now for weddings in the summer, very talented, and yeah, I can definitely vouch for him. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to him, and let's get back to the show. How did we get to this point culturally? Because I was talking to Dr. Hawkins recently at the Marriage Recovery Center, and he considers what's going on in just Western culture as a pandemic of emotionally immature men, and that haven't learned these skills. Maybe it's women as well, but well, has that always been? Have you studied the history of different cultures and stuff like that, where maybe they're stronger in these areas, or do you have any reasons why you believe we're at the state we're in culturally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really know. I'm not certainly not an academic scholar of culture and how we got here, but I could just share what I see, and I'm curious what you think as well. I agree with your previous guest about there is it seems to me that when I look around at like male leaders today, it's it's always kind of maybe been true that men in power kind of hide and they lie and they do backdoor deals, and I get it. Like politicians are kind of like this, but we're at another level of lying, cheating, and stealing openly here in America, and I just am like embarrassed at the level of like really, like we're all okay with this. And obviously not everybody's okay with it, but plenty of people are. And I think for me, men, if we're having a conversation around men and like what's wrong, quote, wrong with a lot of men, it comes back to how we raise boys. I just think boys are raised to be tough, prioritize themselves over the relationship, whereas girls are taught to prioritize the relationship over themselves. And stuff your emotions, be tough, act strong, don't show weakness. And then boy culture with video games, sports, hip hop, musicians, like you name it, just and the misogyny and Super Bowl ads and everything sort of reinforces this objectification of women. Performance equals success and means you're worthy of love. And it's about stepping on other people to get to the top. And it's just a bunch of messages that is invisible, and a lot of parents don't even know what's going on. And then we're all surprised when we have a grown man in his 30s that can't do emotions and is like hurting his marriage. Everybody's like, wow, what's going on? And it's like, well, how was this kid raised? That's just sort of my take. Curious what you think.
Yeah. And yeah, I would agree. A lot of it is driven by dads being in this state themselves and then having kids, and or guys being like the 30-year-old you mentioned, and him having kids and then not being able to teach his kids because he doesn't know what he's doing either, and that cycle just continues. But this road's been around for a while, and I guess, do you have any inclinations on like what's happened the last 30, 40 years? Because it seems to be getting worse, like that dads stop teaching their kids on these issues and kind of let just like culture basically teach them.
Yeah. I think there are a pocket of dads that care and want to become emotionally literate and want to do the work and obviously raise their sons in a more balanced way. So I want to recognize there's obviously a small group of dads doing that. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the bulk of dads are, you can't raise a son, and moms participate in this too. You can't raise a son, like you said, if you're emotionally jammed up or psychologically don't understand yourself and you don't self-reflect at all, you're going to just project so much of your unfinished business onto your kids. And that's everything from winning is the best. Girls are less than boys. There's just so many messages that we could just unpack that are super problematic. And how did we get here? I was listening to something from David Brooks. I think it was this morning or yesterday. He's an author, and he's like, we seem to have lost his take was over the last 50 years or so, we've lost our moral compass, like an agreement about how to behave morally, like what's kind of good and bad and what's right and wrong, that somehow we're just unmoored over time. And I don't really know the causes.
What do you think about, I've already explained before, and it seems somewhat logical that the porn pandemic has caused a lot of this, that if you start watching porn at, 10, 12 years old, your emotional growth actually gets blocked and stops until you stop the addictive
Yeah.
behavior. And so you're 30 years old now, and you've been looking at porn since you were 12. So you basically have the adolescence of a 12-year-old until you stop and actually start dealing with yourself. Would you
I
agree with that
would. I
theory?
would say it's not just porn though. It's screens in general. Like if you hand a 12-year-old, 6-year-old boy an iPad, anytime he's emotionally upset, if there's no education and feelings in the home, and like this is how we do upset, this is how we do feelings, and this is how we process emotions, and this is how we talk about it. If that's not happening, the parents and the kids are going to their screens for like medication and distraction away from feelings. And it could be porn, it
Mm.
could be TikTok, it could just be video games, it could be TV, like whatever. Just constant scrolling, that when I'm upset, I go to my phone and I feel a little better because there's all this dopamine and I don't really have to deal with anything. And then I go back to my life and it's uncomfortable. And so I'm just going to constantly distract, dissociate, and be busy so that I don't have to feel any discomfort and any emotion going on. And that's hard to
Mm.
be around long term.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your own journey been like in this on this subject? Like, how did you become emotionally available and have the different skills?
Yeah, man. I mean, I was raised with a dad who was emotions were definitely not okay, right? They're still not okay with him. Um, and so what did I do? Like I did all the things kids do, just distract and um, compete and just stay busy so I don't have to feel my feelings. And in my 20s, that created a lot of intimate relationship problems with the women I dated because I was the emotionally jammed up guy. I would project like all the hatred I had for my emotional life. I would just project onto women. And when they got emotional, I would just have disdain and I would move away and be like, I can't deal with this. You're fired. And I'd move on to another new relationship. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'm the problem at age 29. And that's when everything shifted because I was like, wow, I'm so jammed up emotionally and relationally. I got to figure this part of my life out because I actually did want partnership. I did want to feel known inside. I had lots of friends, but I felt really alone. So I was like, man, I think I'm the problem here. And then I went to grad school, studied psychology, and started learning, how to feel. I mean, my first therapist for like 6 months was like, how are you feeling? And I would like say, I don't know. And then eventually it turned into numb. And then eventually I started, anger and different emotions started
Mm.
coming up. And then eventually the sadness spilled out and grief and shame. And then I started learning how to feel those with her, like look her in the eyes and feel is
Mm.
like so intense if you've never done that. And then I joined a
Yeah.
men's group and, started just having more authentic relationships where feelings and authentically sharing what was going on inside was welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have to forgive yourself for anything?
Well, I'm not so much into the forgiveness model, but I am into coming to more into peace with myself around some of my choices I made. Like I was in a college fraternity and did some really stupid things and hurt people. I hurt women, I hurt men, I
Mm.
hurt myself. And looking back on that time, like that's where I was at the time. And I've had some conversations with people I hurt, women I hurt, and made amends that way and said, hey, I just want to take responsibility for my behavior. And that's been very healing for me. Um, and also looking
Mm.
at like, why would I? It's easy to look back on our past and say, I should have done X, Y, and Z. But when you're in the moment, it's like you don't have that. So why would I judge myself about that? But it is important for me to clean up and repair hurts I've caused with myself and other
Yeah.
people.
Mm. What is the forgiveness model that you don't agree with?
Well, forgiveness kind of implies right and wrong. There's a morality to it that is a stage, which is fine. But I believe, like in my experience, and one of my mentors taught me this, that if there's negative things that have happened to us or that we've done to others in the past, you can look at kind of the upsides of what hurtful things you've done, upsides to yourself and upsides to the other person. So you can just have a more balanced way of viewing the whole thing. Um, and that's not to let me off the hook. It's to actually look genuinely to see if, well, maybe me hurting these women by blocking my heart and blaming them helped them realize I don't want to be with an asshole and I'm going to go find a guy that's actually more available. And like that's good that that
Yeah.
I was a jerk in that way. Not that I hurt their feelings, of course, but just that they moved on to someone better than me.
Okay. And the forgiveness model doesn't allow for that, or it just it's too much focused on, you believe that there's a blame and there's guilt, or
Well,
what's.
I think I can get more behind forgiveness if people do the work to genuinely forgive, but too often it's lip service and it's just a
Mm,
statement. It's like an intellectual forgiveness. It's not an embodied all the way down. I
okay.
feel remorse, regret, and shame for what I did. And I've felt all those feelings. I've looked in the other person's eyes and I've said, wow, I did that to you. Oh, it's so awful and I'm sorry or whatever. That's really different kind of forgiveness than what most people do.
Okay. Okay. I think that's forgiveness, and the other
Okay.
one isn't.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. And what is the basis of your beliefs? Like, are you a Christian? Are you a humanist? What's the like? What is your
Yeah. I'd
foundation?
say I'm more of a humanist. I see God as like one of my mentors calls it the grand organized design, God. There's a mystery
Okay.
here that I can't possibly explain that I think is really magical and deeply spiritual. And um, I see all of it as everything around me is helping me develop and become who I am. And it's evolutionary.
Mm,
Like there's a movement towards it's like chaos and order constantly evolving. And I'm a part of that mystery. I don't get what's in charge or but I trust deeply that there's
yeah.
something bigger, way vastly beyond me in the cosmos there is like a hidden order to things. And I just bow to the
Mm,
mystery of it all. And I see my marriage as a spiritual path, my parenting as a spiritual path, all designed to, again, to help me evolve and awaken to who I am. Um, and
mm,
and then it's about service, right? I was a Buddhist for many years, technically still am, but I don't call myself a Buddhist. And that's a really powerful philosophy for me more than anything of seeing the basic goodness in everybody. And it's a great model for relating to suffering. That you create more suffering by just trying to resist suffering, and
mm.
instead just open your arms that life is suffering, and perhaps then you can do something about it if you accept that this is part of life. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. We talked about it briefly already, but just want to go and dive into it a little bit more deeply. But what role do you think social media and screen time, pornography play in emotional immaturity and relational breakdown?
Yeah, a huge, massive role. And if it wasn't pornography or screens now, like if we rewind the tapes to my dad's generation where there was no screen, it's like, well, what was going on then? And it's just sort of a neglectful parenting of letting kids, like shutting down emotion. Hey, don't feel upset because I don't know what to do with you. Go outside and play, get out of here type of mentality. It's like kids are just, they feel orphaned. They feel on their own to deal with their emotional life. And children don't know what to do with their emotions. And so they stuff it, they act it out, they masturbate, they fight, they do all kinds of things. And I think the screen porn kind of thing has just made it that much easier and worse, honestly. When I watch
Mm,
kids, how many times do you go to the airport and there's a quiet family of five just sitting there, and all the 2-year-old all the way up to 12-year-olds are just sitting there on their screens and no one's talking, and the adults are just staring at their phones. It's like, wow, is this what we're doing? No one's looking at each other, no one's
it's
connecting and
terrible.
playing. And I've seen, we raised our kids to not do that. So we always had coloring books and games and knitting, and we'd just be hanging out and like looking at the planes and looking around and playing with each other. And I saw a family once doing this recently, and it was kind of a rare moment because I don't see this much anymore. And they were all on their pound boundaries.
Yeah.
The parents had really good boundaries, and there were 3 kids, and they were all on the floor in the terminal playing and having such a good time and playing a game. And then they were running around, and then they were looking at airplanes, and then I was just like, yeah, this is where it's at. And everyone else is
Mm,
just numbed out on their phones. So I think it's really problematic for relationships specifically, because under stress as adults, what do we do when we're triggered and we can't deal with our partner? We go back to our screens, a lot of us. And it
Mhm.
it compromises our development. We're never when are we gonna grow up in our emotional, relational world if we gotta put down the phone and deal with ourselves at a certain point.
Yeah, not try to escape constantly. So I believe you have a couple kids. What does this practically look like in your home when you're not at the airport or outside? Like, do you have certain rules on weekends or in the evenings regarding screen times, or
Yeah,
how do you do it?
100%. So our kids are now 17 and 15, and we were a no screen household. I didn't have a TV up until about 2 years ago. Um,
Oh wow, what made you get a TV?
Movies, just watching movies with the kids.
Okay.
Eventually it was like they were like, "Can we watch Moana? Can we watch?" And I was like, "All right, fine." My wife and I were like, "Okay." And now it's kind of a fun thing to have a TV and watch movies with the kids, reasonably. But we had no, I feel grateful that I'm not raising a 2-year-old right now because it would be harder for me. But back then, it was like the iPhone had just come out when my kids were really small, and it wasn't as uh, amazing and distracting and all encompassing. So it felt a
Mhm.
little easier. So I just want to own that. But yeah, so no screens, no movies. No, like my son's first movie was when he was 10 years old. His first phone was when he
Wow.
was 13, and it was a kind of a brick phone where all you could do is text and voicemail or call phone numbers. And then he got his first smartphone at 14 and a half, I think. And we said no
Mhm.
social media till you're 16. And so when he was 16, he got 10 minutes of Snapchat a day. And then when he was 16 and a half, he asked for Instagram, and we went this back and forth, and we said, okay, we'll let you do, uh, let's see, I think it's 15 minutes of Instagram, 10 minutes of Snapchat a day. We can remove that at any time. Kids help pay for their cell phones. Um, and of course, my daughter got it slightly earlier because the second, right, is always the first one has to
Yeah.
like do the hard thing and kind of breaks in the rules for the second one. So that's how we've done it, and it's great because our dude, hanging out with our kids, we have family night or we're just hanging out, and we can look at each other and connect, and everybody's laying on our bed or the couch, and the phones are over on the phone counter every night. We put phones go on the phone counter. You're not allowed to bring them in your room. So we're very boundaried, and the kids, it's not a power struggle at all. Never has been. Um, and it's
Because you started
Yeah,
from the
just
start.
because I think we did it well from the start, and we value our culture in our family is all about relationship and connection. So, and the parents, the big people, us, know how to do that, and we know how to connect with children. We know how to connect with kids, and we like children. We like kids. We're not trying to get back to work and like shove the kid off to the nanny, or I can't wait to get to, just you to school so I can get back to my shit. So I think we did a lot really well in the beginning. It set the
Mhm.
foundation that there's no power struggles around screens here.
Yeah. And what about your own management of your own screen time? Like, do you have any restrictions on
Oh,
yourself,
yeah.
or are you just really
Yeah,
self
that's a good
controlled?
call out. No, I struggle. Because, I mean, I'd be interested if my kids were here right now, would they say, if you ask them, Dad, how's your dad do with screens? Um, they might say he's on his phone all the time. I don't know what they'd say. Or, yeah, he's pretty good. So I'm not sure. I'd be curious what they would say. Um, but my phone's in my pocket constantly, and I'm looking at it all the time. Um, I have an online business, so that's my excuse. But of course, I use it for distraction, scrolling news or Instagram or whatever. And I don't love how much I is my phone. My wife is way better. She can set her phone down all day and not even look at it again. I'm like, "Where's my phone?"
Mm. Mhm.
Is that
Yeah,
true for
yeah.
you? Are you
Yeah, I
similar or
used to.
different?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. So I do use something called the Case Safe Kitchen
Mm.
Safe Lockbox. So you can
Oh,
set a
that's
timer
nice.
on it, and for up to 11 days, it's a clear box, and you can't open it. You have to break it to open it. You have to buy a new
Wow.
box otherwise. So I've broke 2 boxes in 4 years.
Dude, that's pretty good.
And yeah, so we'll put the TV remote in there or the phone. So on the weekends, I'll do Saturday and Sunday all day usually,
Amazing.
or at dinner time, I'll do it from 5 till 8 o'clock till the kids are in bed, and then I have at least 3 hours. And it mentally makes such a big difference because if it's on the counter at 6:30, right after supper, I subconsciously am thinking about it, so ready to go check it as soon
Yeah.
as dinner's done. But if it's locked up, I just don't. And so I do that, and I do 10 minutes of social media a day between YouTube,
Okay.
Instagram, and Facebook.
Dude, thank you. I'm learning. Good role modeling for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I notice so much, probably on myself, how much happier I am. Not even that my kids like it, but I'm
Yeah,
not on my phone. So
exactly.
I want to go to your book and some core tools and practical application. What is the getting to zero? What is that concept? How did you come up with it? Why did you write this
Yeah.
book?
Well, I wrote the book because I kept teaching people. It seemed like my jam was, well, I'm really good at helping people resolve conflict and how to do that in kind of a systematic step by step way. I can teach a simple process and most people can do it. Now it's harder to stay with it long term if you don't keep practicing it. And getting to zero is a term that means getting back to a good place, which is a place where we both feel connected again after conflict. Zero means kind of zero conflict because there's connection now, but it doesn't mean we're going to try to get to our relationship to have zero conflict ever. That's definitely a misunderstanding. Yeah, so it just means what do we need to do to feel good again together? And that's really what the book is about.
Okay. And what are those tools? Like how just like in a brief overview, what are those tools to get better? Let's say you're in a heated
Yeah.
conflict with your wife or your husband. What are the tools?
Yeah, so I help with kind of frameworks first and context. I always like to set context, and then I get into kind of tools and practical step by steps. And real quick, the framework and the context that we're operating under is conflict's not a problem. You don't need to shame yourself or your partner because you don't know how to do it. It's scary, it's uncomfortable, of course, because there's a lot at stake. We're human social mammals and we don't like it being cast out, or we don't like losing a relationship. We don't like feeling disconnected. And I talk about how this all started in childhood and how our relational blueprint kind of sets the stage. And then I talk about attachment a little bit. And then we get into, okay, now what? You're an adult and you can't figure it out with your partner. What do you do? And in short, we can talk first or we can listen first. This is after conflict. Usually people are like, oh, how do I not yell and scream? And I'm like, it's less about that. And it's more about how do you clean up the mess and get back to a good connected place. Right. And so I focus heavy on like what happens after the fight, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours later, or 5 days later, how do you feel good again? And you can talk first or listen first. If you're going to talk first, you just start with ownership. My part is, and I can imagine the impact on you was. So I lead with ownership and then I follow it up with empathy. Like I think about what that must have been like for me to raise my voice, for example, with you, and man, you must have felt scared or shut down. So that's a way to start the conversation, by talking. Or you can listen first. And I have a process called LUFU, which stands for listen until the other person feels understood. And that's a good bar for everybody, rather than listen. I'm going to listen for my turn and I'm going to I can't wait to tell you what you did wrong. We're going to listen until the other person feels understood, not till I think I understand, but until you say, yeah, Jayson, you're understanding me. That's the bar we're aiming for. And I did that after years of defending myself with my wife. And I was like, she'd say, you don't understand. I'd say, yeah, I do. That went on for years. And I was like, oh, this is really dumb.
Yeah.
I need to come up with something more creative. So the 4 steps, there's 8 steps in LUFU in the book, but the 4 simple steps are just to reflect back kind of the essence of what you heard. Just get them. What are they saying? Yeah.
Encapsulation.
And then validate the feeling. Listen for a feeling word like sad, hurt, angry, frustrated, and validate it, which has nothing to do with right and wrong. It just means your feelings are valid. Yeah, you got scared. You got upset. Got it. That makes sense. And then own your part is 3rd step. And then 4th is empathy. So 3rd step is like, I did raise my voice. So rather than defend yourself, just take responsibility. Yeah, I was a jerk. I looked the other way. I rolled my eyes. I try to really own whatever you did to contribute to the mess. And then empathize is kind of like, oh man, that must have sucked. And yeah, I can relate. That is hard when you do that to me. And and that starts to clear the air. And then if we both agree to do that for each other, obviously, because it doesn't work if I'm doing it to you and you refuse to do a practice like this with me, it's not going to work.
So I know one group of people would really benefit from this because they're in a lot of conflict and fighting a lot. And then there's a whole other group that never fights. They just avoid conflict altogether. And what is your I mean, conflict is good. It's a pathway to intimacy. How do you counsel people that aren't fighting, but they're just avoiding, and there isn't much of a relationship, or there's yeah, the flip side of it? Do you talk about recovery there as well, and how to get
Yeah.
recovered from that spot, or do you push people to more just, hey, learn how to fight
Yeah, I
well?
mean, we have to look at each couple's unique, right? Their story of why this is happening, and often it's the fear of conflict is, I don't want to make this worse. It's already bad enough. I can't tell the truth here. They overreact, or they have some big thing. People have always valid reasons why they're not having hard conversations, and so I help them see that, and then I say, well, the path forward is the bridge is to have hard conversations. It's to start being honest about how you really feel and what you really think, and to learn how to receive that from your partner, because most people are like, well, I've tried that. And it's like, they just get defensive. It's like, I know. So you're going to have to try a new way, which is both of you agree that it's okay to have hard conversations. It's okay to tell the truth. It's okay to give each other feedback. And we're going to both become better listeners. We're going to really field our partner's complaints better. And, it's a maturation, because when people don't do this, they're literally like children. They're underdeveloped. They're stunted in their growth. And the only way forward is to grow yourself up. You need to learn skills and develop your ability to receive strong emotions and talk about hard things. And then you earn the right to have a better relationship. But it's not going to be given to you. And there's no easy path, because you've been avoiding.
Yeah. I remember when my wife and I started doing our I remember when my wife and I started doing our marriage work. One of the things I realized was, first, my wife didn't communicate at all. I almost got nothing out of her. And then about 6 months into our recovery work, she started getting mad a lot, and really
Yeah.
letting me have it. And I was not used to it. And I was like, it was really upsetting. And I was talking to my counselor about it. And he's like, Kyle, this is good. She's
Yeah.
communicating. Okay. She still has to practice how to do it well. But at least it's better than before. And yeah, it sucks that it's yelling, or, not kind words, whatever else like that. But there's
Mhm.
growth here. And that really helped me understand, to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that. At least I'm getting
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
now. And so, but it's taken years to get to where we are now, where we're, I think doing fairly well. Still a long ways to go, and continue to work on it. But
That's cool.
how long do you see it really takes guys, to get to an emotional healthy spot from like your ground zero to, you're actually starting to get somewhere? Because it's not a
Yeah.
easy fix
Yeah.
in
There's
my
no quick
experience.
fix.
It's like
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. I'd say years. I'd say a year you can start to see, 6 months to a year, if you're really working it together, not just on your own, but together. Um, you can, or you're taking a course, or you're with a group of people, whether it's a men's group or a course that's got a cohort, and you're practicing all this stuff together. People progress in 6 months, absolutely, and have lasting change. Like I have a course where it's 9 months long, and 6 months in, it's clicking, and they're starting to get it in their body. That's really powerful. And if you have two people doing that, both partners, for example, it's amazing what can happen. But, development, emotional maturity, relational development is slow, right? And it's, like you said, it's years depending on the issue. I've been at this, man, for 20 years now, and I still am like a, hurt kid sometimes that just wants to point the finger at my wife. So it's all still in me, my reactivity, but my mastery over not clamping down on that and believing it has gotten, incredibly better.
Yeah. What about relating to other men? Like, I think I see a lot of emotional maturity in marriages, but also just among other men, that men don't know how to connect with each other. They know how to talk about hockey,
Yeah.
and how Trudeau
Right.
sucks, but they don't actually know how to say, I'm having a bad day. They don't know how to cry with each other. They don't know how to just be real. Do you focus on that as well? And how can men learn how to do that better?
Yeah. I think for guys, because women do that all the time, right? Most women stereotypically have girlfriends they can open up to and talk and get really honest. And guys just do that way less, or not at all. Like you said, they go to the bar and talk about the game or something else, politics, the weather, their jobs. They're very good at that. But revealing vulnerability and talking about what's going on inside is much harder. So, there's therapy, coaching, men's groups, um, helping a guy like understand the cost of continuing to stay jammed up. Like, I think the smart guys start to feel really off when you're just being in superficial relationships all the time and your wife's complaining and something in your life's not working. If you start listening to that voice and trusting it and not making it wrong and not medicating over it, it's going to guide you toward, I don't like what's going on. I'm going to investigate and I'm going to start to become more self-aware. What is this off feeling? And then it can guide them into therapy, coaching, reading, studying, and understanding themselves better, emotions. And I think men's groups are an excellent place for male to male, like developing that male to male connection where it's okay to hug another man. It's okay to look in his eyes and talk about how sad you are or how angry you are at your partner or how much shame you feel about your financial situation or whatever. That starts to set men free. It's incredibly powerful when men start to do that work.
Yeah,
as you know. Right?
What do you teach about boundaries? Like what place do healthy boundaries have in a relationship?
Yeah, they're pretty critical. It's all part of this, what we could call differentiation in psychology, where as little boys or something, as kids, maybe it wasn't okay to, again, speak up or say no to mom or whoever, and to just be a yes man, a people pleaser, and be a nice guy. There's so many different variations of someone with no boundaries, right? And part of the work of those people over time is to realize it's okay to say no. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to not go to Thanksgiving dinner, the holidays, whatever. It's okay to just start saying no as a practice. And that becomes a really great place to differentiate my feelings from yours, that it's okay to be me over here without, and it's okay if you're upset, even if I make a certain choice, because we can both support each other in that. So there's a lot of ways boundaries can help a couple or friendships really develop. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think boundaries can get unhealthy and that they are used like as a weapon to create distance?
Yeah, for sure. For example, I've worked with many self-proclaimed nice guys over the years, people pleasers, and they get hip to boundaries and they're like, oh yeah, fuck everybody. Like I'm going to, and then they swing to they've had really porous boundaries and they swing to the other side of being really rigid and kind of standoffish. And that can hurt, people. And I did that with my parents, for example, when I got hip to this personal growth stuff and cut my mom off for many months. And it was a good step. So it's like, as long as you have an asterisk with those boundaries, like, hey, I don't want to talk to you, Kyle, for like 2 weeks, and I still love you. I still care about you, but this is for me. I'm really suck at saying no. And I just need space. And I get it if your feelings are hurt, and this is what I got to do for myself. And like, that's like considering our audience and actually caring about their feelings too. Like I didn't do that with my mom, and she was like devastated because I was so rigid in my no contact boundaries. It's fine to even go no contact, but be considerate. Like, hey, I'll be back in a couple months, or hey, I know this is hard for you. Yeah.
You talk about childhood wounding in communities where family loyalty is extremely high and honoring your parents is like a moral command. How do you acknowledge your parents' failures without feeling like you're betraying them or blaming them? I see a lot of people struggle with that, where they just, the fact that their dad might have hurt them or their mom is just something they can't, comprehend, or they just don't want to go there because it feels like, they're, talking badly about their parents or things like that. Do you come across that?
Yeah,
how do you
100%, dude. So it's like denial is one of the first things we have to get through. And like when you start going to therapy or coaching or doing work on yourself and you start to realize like, oh, you get out of denial about how it was in your childhood and you're like, actually, maybe it wasn't so good. And you start really reflecting and being honest and maybe even asking your parents questions of, hey, what happened when I was 5? Or what happened to you guys when I was 10? And you start getting curious, you start reacting, and you finally now are feeling some of the things you pushed down as a kid, and you now have valid feelings about how shitty your parents did or mistakes they made, and you want to let them know. So one of the stages I see people go through is they start having a lot of feelings because they've repressed them, and then they want to go tell their parents about it, and they want to change their parents. Like, I can't believe you guys did this, and you need to listen to me. And they start just wanting their parents to be like them on this personal growth path, and most of our parents have no interest. And so I think that's a mistake.
Mm.
The part that's valid is go feel your feelings. It's okay to be angry at your parents. It's okay to feel all this grief for sort of what you missed out on in your childhood, like et cetera, et cetera. But your parents are probably not really that available for this conversation. You could try and see, but I would keep the expectations incredibly low. And what I tell
Mm.
people to do as a practice is radical acceptance of your parents the way they are. Don't just expect your parents to be the way they are for the rest of their lives, and stop making them wrong. This is who they are. They did the quote best they could with the
Mm.
values they had. And it's your job to do the work to accept your parents as they are and set boundaries accordingly,
Mm.
stand up for yourself, start having a voice, because look, you're an adult now. Are you really going to let your dad, who's 80, tell you what to do over the holidays? Or are you going to tell yourself what to do and like take command of your own life and tell him like, hey, this is what I'm doing, dad. And I get there's impact over there and I care about you. And this is what I'm doing now.
Mm.
So there's a
I really like
process
that.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the radical acceptance part. It is one of the things that I realized a week after my daughter died. I remember sitting in my driveway and realizing I couldn't fix
Mhm.
this problem. It was the weirdest thing, because it was like usually any other problem I've experienced was like your brain starts to fly
Right.
around and think about possible solutions, but my brain was just like it just didn't move. It was a
Mhm.
total surreal experience. And I had a similar experience when I was doing some EMDR therapy, with stuff that happened in my childhood, and realizing, hey, like my childhood is done. It's past. I
Yeah.
can't go back there and fix it. But my parents can't go back there and be 30 and 40 years old again and fix it either. And to expect them to fix it now is an expectation they can't meet. And so all of a sudden I realized it's kind of like it made me think of that experience I had with my daughter. And a week after she died, that it was like, hey, this is dead. I need to learn to deal with this. Yes, it's still painful and it affects me just like daughter's
Yeah.
death does, but it doesn't mean like I have to move on from it, right? It's not or maybe move on or learn to accept that this is part of my story, and not try to get them or myself to
Mm.
change or fix it. And that was
Yeah,
really,
that's
really big.
powerful. Yeah, I think an important
Yeah.
part in that loss is just the acceptance of the loss allows actually us to feel, especially if we're willing. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
now I can feel my anger, grief, my devastation, all the things,
Yeah.
and then we can move on, because a lot of people want to move on without the feeling part.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I tried
I've done
long,
that
long
too
time.
in my different
Yeah.
situations. One thing I
Yeah.
just wanted to add about the
Yeah.
parent thing is, and another frame we can take besides radical acceptance is, we can say, what are the upsides again to how my parents raised me? A lot of people don't want to ask that question.
Mm.
For example, my dad, emotionally, constipated and jammed up, just constantly shut my feelings down, hurt me a lot, right? And made it very difficult for my relationship life in my 20s. And then my mom had her own weird porous boundaries thing with me. It was like I needed to unconsciously take care of her to make her feel good about herself, because she felt bad about herself. And she would be there for me some of the time, and some of the time she would kind of punish me with silence. So I had, this weird childhood. I mean, I had a lot of privilege, but I also had this very compromised relational, emotional thing. But the upsides of the whole thing is it pushed me to understand relationships. And I started a school about relationships and made a
Mm.
lot of money and helped a lot of people change their lives. And none of that would have been possible if I would have had a quote perfect childhood, or my parents were all emotionally available and really sweet and caring to me and, so relational. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. So there's
Mm.
an upside to, no matter how hard your childhood was, there's upsides to it. And it's like, look at what you're doing with your life. And if you're on purpose, it's very clear usually. If you're not sure what your purpose is and you're a little lost, it might be more murky for you. But like, my purpose is really clear. I'm here to help people with their relationships, right? and to heal my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my parents gave me that gift by raising me exactly as they did.
Hmm. What advice would you give parents that have a son, an adult son or adult daughter that's, waking up to their emotions and realizing what's going on, and maybe that's putting strain in that relationship, and distance, for a period of time? What advice would you give the parent?
I would say that, you're the adult here forever. You're the parent, and it's your job. If you're even listening to this or open minded, it's your job to be the listener, to be the bigger person, and just hear your kids out, and validate their feelings if you know how to do that. Like, yeah, honey, there were some gaps in my parenting, 100%. Like, own it.
Mm.
That would be incredibly healing for your kid to hear. Not a lot of parents will do that or do the work to even be open to that. But if for some reason there's a parent listening and with adult children, I mean, if you can just own your mistakes with your kids, you don't even have to wait for your kids to bring it up. You could go to your kids and say, "Hey, I screwed up here and there, and I just want to take responsibility for that. And I can imagine that really sucked for you." That would be
Mm.
enormous for parents to do that.
Yeah. I see some of the biggest problems in tight knit communities where
Mhm.
everyone knows everyone, and I think partially because the fear of scandal or problems is so high. How do couples do messy repair work when the social cost of imperfection feels high? Of like, we have issues and things like that, or that they're, fear what other people might say in the family and the community.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard because uh, most of us do want to look good in front of our community. We want to look like we have it together, right? Financially, and our health and our relationships, our marriage, our parenting. But everybody has to realize, like, that's a front. Like, do I want to be a part of a community that where we're fronting all the time? We're all wearing masks. And is there a pocket of the community, or could I start a subgroup inside the community where we do things a little more authentically and openly, where it's safe and it's okay to talk about our real problems and what's really going on in the home behind closed doors? And can we learn how to receive each other's mess without making it wrong or fixing it or judging it? To me, those are the best families and communities, is if we have places to go like that.
Hmm. Hmm. You teach, um, that we must have a solid relationship with ourselves first. How do I reconcile that with, the theological training that many have, where that teaches self is the problem and self denial is the
Hmm.
goal?
That's a hard one. I mean, I first of all, to be clear, I don't think we have to quote heal ourselves to be in a marriage, right? Or to finally find love. Like, if you're single and you're listening, you don't have to be perfect and do years of therapy before you start dating. It's like you're going to have pockets of your own psychology and issues that are just here the rest of your life. Like, we all have a shadow, and the shadow doesn't go away. It's like here forever. Um, so we're a work in progress, like everybody. And can we just be honest about that? And then, yeah,
Hmm.
of course, do some self work, some inner work, a lot of self reflection. And I would say, the denial of the self and sort of this, like, are you kind of saying be selfless? Don't think about yourself so dang
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, and it's not all about you and your problems. Just, suck it up and serve the
Yeah.
other
I
person.
do think that has a place. Like, when I was running a group with adolescent people who were sober, getting sober from drugs and alcohol addiction, they taught me that when you're really having a hard day, go help someone else. And I do think that's really
Hmm.
wise, to not get lost in the cesspool of our shame and just our woe is me, because the woe is me thing can be as self-absorbed as the person who's trying to be famous, right? It's just like you're thinking about yourself all day.
Yeah,
And so it's like a both
it's
and. It's
pride.
like, um, the hallmark predictor of securely attached relationships, especially parent-child, is a parent's willingness and ability to self-reflect and make meaning and understand their history and their trauma, and make meaning out of it and put the pieces together into a coherent narrative. That's Dan Siegel's work. And that is incredibly helpful to be a parent who self-reflects, so that you're not going to play out your unfinished business all over your kids or ask them to do that work. So that's
Yeah.
huge. And yeah, we don't want to get lost in our own issues. Of course, we want to keep the other people in mind in our life, and we want to care. And it's just not all about us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I believe in the Bible's views of marriage primarily as a covenant before God, not just a contract for personal fulfillment. Does your model of conscious partnership leave room for staying in a hard marriage purely out of a covenantal duty, or is personal happiness always the metric?
Yeah, that's important. Again, it would be probably case by case, but I think it's a bummer that people feel like they have to stick out a miserable marriage or an abusive marriage or a neglectful marriage or a sexless marriage or a marriage where there's just a lot of harm or neglect going on. I'm like, how is that? Who's that serving at the end of the day? And usually when one person's suffering like that, the other person's suffering also. So it's not just a one person suffering in that example. Both people are hurting in some way. And I mean, it's each their own, right? If that's how you want to play it, and you want to believe that, I think that's okay. And I sure there's been cases. It's like the classic example is: if you're in a miserable marriage, do you stay married for the kids until they're out of the house, and then get divorced, or maybe never get divorced because you're just like, we're not going to do this because we had the agreement with God or our church or ourselves. Again, that has a place, but you just have to understand the cost. Like, are we both willing to do this? And is this really what our life is for, and how we want to roll and what we want to do? And maybe if both people are like, yes, even though we're hurting here and we are distant and haven't had sex in years and we're just kind of roommates, that's okay. Two people want to choose that,
Yeah. Yeah. So I had it that the first 5 years of my marriage were pretty bad. Then the next 3 were terrible, so bad. And then the last 2 have been the good years, and it's slowly been getting better. A lot of people actually recommended that I divorce, or tell Nicole that she divorce as well. I'd been unfaithful, and it was just like, it was sexless, it was communicationless, it was it was touchless. It was not good. Like, my coach told me, like, what are you doing? This doesn't make sense. And I chose to, for multiple reasons, to stay in it, and so did my wife. And now we're reaping the benefits of it, right? Because we held on for as long as we did. So how do you teach people maybe not to quit too early then? And just say, yeah, it is hard right now, and maybe you do want to give up, but like, you have barely tried.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're the perfect example of why staying with it can be incredibly powerful. Because I think a lot of people bail too early. I just think they do. It gets hard and they're like, okay, I can't stand you, or gosh, we can't even work anything out. See you later. And we tried therapy once and it didn't work. And it's like, well, okay, apparently you need to try more things, or a different practitioner.
Or try longer.
Right.
So go to the gym once.
I went and saw a trainer. Shouldn't I be in shape now? How many times did you see him? Once? Yeah. So again, I think it's like business, like 90% of businesses fail or something. And a lot of people bail when they could just go to a class or get some mentorship and learn how to work through the stuck place in their business. And it's a similar mentality, right? I didn't lose the weight, so I quit. It's like, I think people find that especially partnership, if you have 2 willing people, like maybe you and your wife, who are like, let's do this, let's agree to stay in the fire here and see where it takes us, that is incredibly potent. If like, let's say you said, I want to stay, honey, let's go. And she was like, I can't do it. And maybe, and I'm not sure. And then she just was like half-assing it the whole time. That might not work, right? You need 2 people to go all in and stay with it.
Yeah, that's true. I want to ask some questions about like the role of men and women. You teach mutual responsibility, so like a 50-50 system. In my belief system, the husband bears greater responsibility for the home and leading it. Do you push back against that approach? Or Okay. Why do you think it
Yeah.
doesn't
Well,
work?
no, it's not that it doesn't work. It's just it's a model. It's one way, right? So
Okay.
it's not that
Okay.
it doesn't work. It works great for some people. And I think a lot
Mm.
of more sort of Judeo-Christian families are more traditional in that sense. Like I grew up in Utah where there are a lot of Mormons, and the kind of Mormon model is the man is the leader of the house, even though basically it's kind of ironic because I feel like the woman is actually running the house and she's kind of the leader. So
Yeah.
what does that really mean? So when guys say, "Well, I'm the leader of the family," I ask, "Well, how so? And how's that leadership model work? And are you both agreeing that you're the leader?" Like if I ever said I was the leader of my family, my wife would punch me in the face. We are co-leaders of our family. It's a collaborative
Mm.
model where we both have and it's not 50-50 for me, it's 100% responsibility. So that's 200% total of leading our family, getting to repair, working through hard issues. We both are responsible for that. Now,
Yeah.
it might be more
Yeah.
traditional in that, like, I have traditionally made more money, let's say, but she's working and she's raised the kids a little more than me, but it's been like 60-40, her to me. There are gender kind of traditional gender roles at times. You know, I take out the trash. I I do all the yard work shit. I handle certain things that she doesn't, and vice versa. You know, we both cook, we both clean, we both participate in a lot of things.
Mm.
So, is there a leader here? No, for us, it's co-leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it depends what your definition of leader is, because if it's just a title that you think you have and now you're owed something, I would say then you're a ruler,
Right.
not a leader. But if you're a leader, then you're actually doing
Yeah.
doing things. It's like it's things you do that make you a leader, not things that not a title. But I think it's especially important in terms of just like when there's problems in the marriage, that it's the guy's responsibility to call the
Oh, that's
counselor,
cool. Uh-huh.
and that he takes initiative to like try to make things better, and doesn't wait passively for her to do something or just do nothing at all, but to especially take active roles and try to make the situation better, and being a leader on
Yeah,
that
that's
on that
cool.
side.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great in more marriages if men would be the one that raised their hand and said, "I got it. I'm going to go find us a good person." Because so many women,
Yeah,
I think stereotypically, women are leading that conversation to make the relationship better, right? Would you
that's true.
say,
Yeah, yeah.
like, can you explain, like, what other ways might you and your wife agree that you're the leader? Like, how does that work?
I guess she asks me to, we meet on everything and discuss it, I figure out what she wants and what I want, stuff like that, and then it's usually my call on what we're going to do or not. So we're thinking, for example, about
Yeah.
moving to a different place, and so we just, yeah, I want to know, we work together and all the pros and cons on work and personal and this and that, and then ultimately she looks at me and she goes, okay,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? And to make the final call. So it's very much
Mhm.
on those kinds of things, but it's how you described it, as that you're both 100% responsible. I would agree that that kind of shows that's kind of happening here as well, where it's not like uh, you know you're waiting on the other person to do something, or like that's my job, this is her job, kind of thinking, but more just in the sense of we're both responsible, but ultimately like the buck
Yeah.
stops with me.
And would she ever get have you guys ever experienced this in yourself or anyone else in this model where she might you make a call and she was like had a different opinion, but she's like, "Fine, we'll go with your thing." And then there emerges a resentment.
Yeah, I mean that it has happened, and then when
Yeah.
you talk through it, to be like, "Hey, yeah, okay, yeah, I screwed up, or it didn't work out," and then we try to deal with that. But I think for a long time, what happened is that I um, didn't actually take into account what she
Mhm.
wanted or liked and stuff like that, and it was more just driven from selfishness
Uh,
rather than from service. And when my disposition is that way, then I think leadership
yeah.
goes wrong
Amen.
everywhere,
Yeah.
not just
Yeah,
inside the
that's
home.
great.
So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just you not being considerate, right, is not gonna go well.
that's correct. Yeah, I mean, you're leading as like you're I take Jesus' example, and he gave the example of when he was with his disciples at the Last Supper, and he got on his feet and washed their feet and said to them, "Hey, I'm the leader here. I'm the greatest, and look what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Lead like this." And so I think that's true
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah.
service.
Cool.
You've criticized rigid masculine and feminine polarity frameworks. How would you speak to a couple who believes specific gender roles are biblically mandated? Can your tools still work then within a complementarian framework? Do you come
Yeah.
across that?
So to clarify, um, masculine and feminine in the way that the sort of New Age movement teaches it is different than gender roles. And they try to tease that out, but most people can't tease those things apart. The bottom theory kind of goes, the underlying theory is like we both have masculine and feminine qualities in us equally, but men tend to be more holding the more masculine position, and women tend to be holding the more feminine position. And so that's why people get really confused here. Um, so where I criticize it is more in the um, masculine means man and feminine means woman. And it's like the masculine's job to lead in the bedroom, to take charge and have a direction. And the feminine's job is just to let go and receive his leadership and his direction. And she's the one that's supposed to nurture and he's not nurturing. And I'm like, wait, are we talking about gender roles? Or are we talking about these energies? Like, what are we talking about here? Because you can have a very, quote, feminine man with a very masculine woman, like let's say a guy who's really nurturing and raising the kids and doesn't have a job, and the wife is the breadwinner and kind of ball buster, and she's out there kicking ass and taking names in her career. What's wrong with that? Like, who cares? Right? Why does he need to be more masculine? And why does she need to be more feminine if it's working for them? Like, so
Mm.
what? So I just think people get really stuck here in shoulding each other and themselves on gender, like masculine means ... It's like, says who?
Mm.
Where are these definitions coming from?
Yeah. I like the should thing. I think that comes up a lot, where people believe they should be doing this or should be doing that because some guru said so, but it's actually not something that they've decided themselves. It's not like a belief system that they fully have embraced, but more are parroting, and that I find goes south fast because it never really lasts either, and it's your own kind of interpretation,
Yeah, that's
variation
right.
of it.
And then there's another layer that bothers me in this model, which is, let's say you have a man in a traditional marriage, let's say man-woman marriage, where the guy feels anxious that the woman isn't touching him enough, and he's not having sex enough, and he's under stress. He wants to talk about it and talk about his feelings and talk about what's going on and where is she and why is she withdrawn. And then she over here is like getting more and more annoyed because he keeps wanting to talk, and she just wants space and wants to kind of withdraw into her cave. And this has nothing to do with gender. This is an attachment nervous system dynamic that's going on that comes completely from how you were raised in the first 3 years of your life.
Yes.
And people don't understand this, right?
Yeah.
They don't study psychology like I do. They don't study relationships, and they don't know. So they label that man as needy, and he shouldn't be so needy. And they label the woman as masculine or avoidant and, problematic. And it's like both of them are wrong. And it's like, that doesn't do anything to help the marriage. They need to learn, okay, this is what we do under stress. When we go into conflict, you retreat and I want to talk about it. That's really frustrating. How are we going to deal with this dynamic? And it has, again, nothing to do with gender.
Yeah. I think that's good. Okay. To close out, if a couple is listening right now and is stuck in a recurring conflict that feels hopeless, what's a first small step they can take?
Admit that to themselves first, right? Individually, like, admit that. And then if your partner is in denial about that or doesn't want to see that truth of yours, you got to be like, okay, wow, this is going to be hard to talk about, but you got to bring it to the partner. If you both admit, hey, we're kind of stuck, that's going to be easier. But if one of you is stuck and the other one thinks we're fine, that's going to be a harder conversation to have because you're not having a shared reality there. But your job is to get to a shared reality, and both people's experience are valid, not right or wrong, just valid. And then you might then take it to a close confidant, a friend, a therapist, and say, this is the truth. Like we can't get anywhere if we don't admit what's going on. And then get help, study, read, listen to this podcast, go find people that you want to train with, study with, that can be a guide to help you through it.
Yeah. And last question, what's one belief about marriage if changed would transform most relationships?
That marriage can be hard off and on forever. And it doesn't mean you're with the wrong person. Something like that.
Okay. And why that? Why do you pick that?
Because I think people come into marriage with a lot of fantasies and fairy tales about how it's going to be because they met the quote right person, or, oh my gosh. And then the moment it gets hard, they're like, what's wrong? It must be the person. It must be me. And it's like, no. You chose just the right person to deal with now the workshop you're in for forever. Do you want to say yes to the workshop like Kyle has here and just stay in the fire and learn? Or do you want to like point the finger at people and get out of there? I just think people don't get that long-term partnership, like being a team. Marriage is a team sport, right? And being a team is hard to collaborate forever about everything, and share leadership, share power, share decision-making, work through hard things. Like that is not easy, especially given where a lot of us grew up. We didn't have maybe a great role model. So I think if people could just embrace the suck and embrace conflict and embrace like difficulty, I think they would just be a little more relaxed about when it gets hard.
Thank you very much for these answers. I've really enjoyed our chat. If people want to work with you, what's the best way that they can do that? What is the programs that you offer?
So it's JaysonGaddis.com is kind of the private coaching side. If you want to take a course, it's relationshipschool.com. Those are probably the easiest ways to find what I'm up to.
Okay. And what are your different programs? Like, what does coaching look like with you? What is the
coaching with me is you got to apply, and I'm selective about who I work with. I work with couples and individuals. Mostly I work with married entrepreneurial dads, either them and their partner or them alone. That's kind of my target guy. And then courses, I teach, just kind of courses for all of us that could help us become better communicators in our most important relationships. And there's short, like 30-day courses, and then there's like a 9-month course that's super intense. So it's like, how much do you want to go for it?
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time today. I appreciate it. If the listeners want to listen, just a reminder, the Jayson Gaddis podcast and the author of Getting to Zero. So thank you for your time and your insights today. It's been an interesting chat, and I've enjoyed it, and hopefully it helps.
Yeah, thanks, listeners. Kyle. Thanks for being an example of what's possible in a marriage.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a miracle what's happened in my world. But yeah, put in the work, it pays off. Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the episode with friends or family, or subscribe to the show. Leave a comment. That's always enjoyable as well. I'll respond to those. But otherwise, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that episode and were blessed by it, would you be willing to support the show? That would help a lot in creating more content, improving the quality of the content, putting the production value, getting more guests on, and me being able to spend more time and energy towards it. So if you're interested in doing that, you can click up here and it'll take you to a support page. But you can also subscribe to the podcast by clicking over here and doing that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.